Hi, and welcome to JavaScript Mastery. I will teach you everything you need to know to work with JSON using JavaScript, including creating JSON and parsing it to get access to the data. You'll come across JSON quite often, so it is mandatory for you to understand how it works. JSON is commonly used for moving data in web applications, for example, say sending some data from the server to the client or vice versa. But before going into the depth, let's find out what JSON means. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it is a lightweight data interchange format. It is easy for humans to read and write, and it is easy for machines to parse and generate. Therefore, it is a widely used format in programming. JSON parsing is a very common and important thing to learn in programming. Almost every other data coming from the server is in the form of JSON. In this video, I'm going to teach you what JSON is and how to create it. Here you can see a parse of simple JSON format to normal JavaScript objects. We are going to work with real-world APIs here, so you can see how JSON format behaves in real-world examples. Here we are fetching data from an API that is exactly in JSON format. Afterwards, we are outputting it nicely to the user after we parse it. And the data that is coming from an API is going to be random famous quote. Therefore, the application is going to be called random quote generator that is going to be built in React and is simply going to output quotes on the click. This is a simple application, and even people with no previous knowledge of React can follow along. React is not the main point of this video. JSON is. And that's why we are using a real-world API that is outputting data in JSON format so we can parse it and output it nicely to the user. So stay tuned and let's dive into the code. First thing we need to do is open a new directory. And now, if you have never used the React, there is a simple boilerplate setup called Create React App that simply creates all the things necessary to start developing right now. If you have never used Create React App, type npm install Create React App. Since I have already used it before, I'm just going to type Create React App and then specify the name of the folder. And it is going to be called JSON. Type enter. And now it is going to set up a complete boilerplate to start coding in React. Since this is a long process, I'm going to skip the video for you, and I'll be right there. After it finally installs, we can simply cd into JSON, and we can see a directory created for us by Create React App. But that is not the main point of this video. JSON is. So let's create a new file called quotes.json. Since the data we are going to fetch from an API are going to be quotes. While we're there, we can also create a file, let's say getQuotes.js. And let's simulate a normal JavaScript object here. Objects as you know them. So let's say const quotes is going to be equal to an array. And that array is going to have two quotes. Every quote is going to be a simple object, as you can see here. First object is going to have a key quote, and this is going to be quote 1. It is also going to have an author. That is going to be author 1, and it is going to have a category. So category of the quote, which is going to be category 1. And if I copy this here and just change everything to 2, we now have 2 quotes in our quotes array. Simple as that. Arrays, quotes, and key value pairs as you know them. Now let's see how this data look in JSON. So I'll put this to the side and create a simple array of quotes. So just as we have had them here. And our quotes here are going to be the same. They're also going to have a quote, author, and a category. Basically, the only major difference between normal JavaScript objects and JSON's JavaScript object notation is that the key also must be wrapped in double quotes. So we'll have quote is going to be equal to string quote 1. So you need to use double quotes. We are going to have an author that is going to be equal to author 1, and we are going to have a category that is going to be equal to category 1. And now we can simply copy this and add number 2 there. Okay, that's it. That's the only major difference between JavaScript objects and JSON's JavaScript object notations. As you can see, this is easily readable and understandable, but it is also easily parsable and producible for a computer. It is just as simple key value pairs and nothing more. Now we can delete this, and I will show you how our real data that is going to be fetched from the API is going to look like. Exactly like this. So we didn't change anything. We'll just fetch real quotes with real authors and categories. That's it. For now, we can close this and remove quotes. Okay, in file getQuotes.js, we are going to actually get data from a real API. For that, we are first going to need to import Axios from Axios. So we are going to import without braces, sorry. We're just going to import Axios from Axios. And now, the URL we are going to fetch from is this URL here. So we can see it here. We are just going to copy it and put it to a variable. So const URL is equal to this. Simple enough. Now we are going to catch that. For that, we are going to use a async function. If you watched my previous video about async functions, you'll know how important and how valuable they are, because we are asynchronously going to catch data about those quotes. So we can simply write const get data or get quotes is equal to keyword async before the function, and then a simple arrow function. In here, we are going to get data, but we are going to extract it since it's going to be data.data, and we don't want that. So const data is equal to await, and we'll use axios.get, and we'll type in the URL. Now, since Axios library already knows that we are using JavaScript, it automatically parses JSON format for us, so we don't have to. But in this tutorial, we don't want Axios to parse it. We want to see how real JSON looks. So we are going to change configuration of Axios a bit. We are going to create a new object, that is simply going to be called config, and it is going to have transform response equal to arrow function that simply returns response. In normal case, this would just parse our response, but we are just returning it as it is in JSON. Also, since we are using this API, it requires headers that have an access API key to it. So we'll type headers is equal to an object, and now we can move on to here and see that we need to sign up to consume this API. So please sign up, and afterwards there will be an API key that you can copy and paste it where it needs to be. Now that you have the key, you're going to simply type in this. So a header called x mashup key, you can just copy this from here, and then here you'll type your API key. Afterwards, next parameter next to this URL is going to be config. So we are simply going to pass our config next to our URL. And now in this async function, after we get the data, we can simply return it. That's it for this file, except the one thing. We are going to use this function outside of this file in a React app, so we are going to need to export it. We are going to export it as default export, so it doesn't have to have a name. So we're going to write export default and then async function. Afterwards, we are going to close this and open app.js inside a source folder. We are going to be greeted with this, but we don't need this logo here, so you can delete it. We also don't need anything besides our simple div. That's it. Finally, since we are going to be using a Material UI kit for this, for simple styling, we can install Material UI. And you can do it by typing npm install --save and then typing at material-ui core. Paste that, let it install, and then while it installs, you can simply import all the components we are going to be using. So it's going to be a button, card content, and typography from Material UI core. You can type that while it installs. And now we can start handling the logic. First, we'll specify the state of our app. So we'll have one object called state that is going to be equal to an object containing a quote that is going to be equal to an empty string at the beginning, and an author that is going to be equal to an empty string again. Finally, we can start creating our UI. First, we are going to have typography. Typography in Material UI is basically all paragraphs, headings, and text. Typography of variant h2, and inside we are going to write random quote generator. Okay, now that this is set up, we can simply type npm start to run our React application. It is going to open up on localhost 3000, and your browser should open it automatically. Okay, it's here. As you can see, this is the text we just typed, and we can start on adding things. We'll create a card that is going to have card content inside it. And inside card content, we are going to have typography, 2 to be exact, and then an HR, horizontal rule, and there is going to be a button at the end. Okay, now that we have it, we can specify the variant of this typography. It is going to be H5, and the variant of this typography, this will not have a variant, but it will have a color, and it's going to be text secondary. Okay, now that is done, we can specify styles for button. It is going to be color primary, and it is going to be variant of outlined. Okay, now that we have this set up, I'll quickly give you the classes for it. You can type class name equal to card, to a card component. You can type class name equal to margin top on typography with text secondary, and you can copy that class over to button because they're both going to have a margin top. Okay, so we have random quote generator here. Here we are going to extract our quote. So we can type curly braces. In React, if something is logic, so if you want to execute JavaScript between HTML, you type curly braces, and then we are going to extract it by typing this.state. So we are entering this object and then that quote. Finally, we are going to put our author here by also doing curly braces, this.state.author. Okay, and now we can add our styling. I'll leave you all styling in comments, so you can just copy and paste it out. So we don't waste time on styling. Okay, that's it. Finally, we can add an event listener to our button. It is going to be onClick listener. So onClick is equal to braces and then an arrow function, because it is going to be executed just when we click it. And it is going to trigger this.handleClick, a function we didn't yet create. And text of the button is going to be click for quotes. Now that it's set up, we are going to see how it looks. But before it looks, I changed this capitalized A to small a, so write app with non-capitalized A here, save it, and let's see how it looks. Okay, we get random quote generator and this click here. The next thing we need to do is add a click handler. This.handle, and we'll type click here. This.handle click. Okay, so we can create that here. We'll type handle click is equal to an arrow function. Okay, now this is set up. We are going to need to extract values from getQuotes, where we are catching the values. So we are going to first move this getQuotes inside our source directory, and we are going to import it. So import getQuotes from / and then getQuotes. Simple as that. Afterwards, every time someone clicks this onClick listener, we'll catch that function. So now we can type getQuotes, and since this is a promise, type that then, and then we are going to get data in that promise, and first we can console.log that data to see what we get back. Okay, now we can move to our browser, open our console, and when we click, let's see what happens. Okay, we get an array with quote and author here and category. We can copy it and paste it here, and we can see what we get. I'll leave the link to this JSON formatter down below. Okay, so we get simple JSON data. Quote with double quotes here, author, and category. And you can see here it is parsed to simple JavaScript object with quote, author, and category. Now, in our JavaScript files, we cannot use JSON as it is. We need to parse it to JavaScript objects. The way you do that is like this. So after we get the data, we need to parse it. And there are two built-in JSON methods. So one of them is JSON.stringify, and then the JSON file here. And the second one is JSON.parse. JSON.stringifies converts an object to JSON. So converts JavaScript object to JSON, and JSON.parse converts JSON to an object. As you can see, or as you can guess, we need to use JSON.parse here to parse JSON to an actual JavaScript object. So we are going to use JSON.parse, and we are going to we are going to place data inside. Afterwards, we can console.log and see what we get back. Okay, now we see we get a simple array with only one object inside of it, and it is all well formatted for JavaScript. Okay, now we can see that all data that is coming is in JSON format. Now, we don't need to parse it. Since we are using Axios, we can see that by default it is parsing it. So if we only remove this here and let it transform, first we didn't want to do it because we are learning how JSON looks. Now if we let it transform normally and parse it, we can just console.log that data here, and it should already be parsed into normal JSON objects. Sorry, in normal JavaScript objects. As you can see, it already is. Now we need to extract only quotes and author. So what we are going to do is we are going to set them to the state. In React, you cannot mutate data. So we are not going to do something like this. That state, that quote, is equal to data.quote, for example, because that is mutating the data and changing the state. In React, we get a built-in method called setState. So we'll use this that setState that is equal to an object, and then you can type quote and simply type data.quote. And you can repeat the same for the author. That's it. Now these values, when the function runs, are going to be transferred over to this, that state, and then that quote. And using that way and that logic, we are going to extract them here. Okay, and this needs to be first quote of array because we only have one, so we'll type data 0 and then that quote or that author. As you can see, we are catching the data in a JSON format and parsing it with Axios to create meaningful quotes and extract meaningful information to then put it out to the client and let users see. That's the way that JSON is used in almost all other APIs, and that's the way we used it here. I hope you learned something in this video and are happy with the finished product. Of course, you can change the styling and play with this more, and I'm planning on creating a video that is going to feature many other APIs. Just a rundown of all funny APIs that you can use to play with JSON and to play with simple data and create random projects. I hope you liked what you learned in this video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.